Welcome to today's GNCC Lunch and Learn on the important topic of maximizing emotionally effective leadership. My name is Mishka Balsam and I will be your moderator for the next hour. The strain of the pandemic is leaving its mark on us. COVID-19 is proving to be the greatest test of emotional intelligence and effectiveness in a generation. Business owners are trying to save jobs and pivot creatively. Individuals are faced with ever-changing demands in their careers and personal life. Academia and educational leaders are challenged to redefine new processes to ensure student progress. Essential workers are continuously faced with unforeseen challenges and ever-increasing demands. There is no doubt that leadership, not just corporately, but also personally, is one of the most heavily tested skills throughout the coronavirus pandemic. It's easy to read articles about how we should or should not behave or be. In real practice, however, behavioral changes are hard, take practice and continuous commitment. The way we deal with our emotions shapes everything that matters: our actions, our careers, relationships, our health and happiness, and they take expertise. So we are very fortunate to be joined over this lunch hour by Leade Calvin, owner of Positive Forward Motion, to guide us on this topic. And Lunch and Learns have been made possible because of partnerships. And one such incredible partner is YMCA Employment and Immigrant Services of Niagara. By working together to connect people with opportunities, they're giving more Canadians a chance to succeed. And speaking to their services, we are joined today by Diana Delia, General Manager of Employment and Immigrant Services. Diana, over to you.
Good afternoon and welcome everybody. And thank you to the GNCC for allowing us to continue to sponsor these wonderful, great breaks at refueling ourselves. Body, mind, and spirit is what the Y is all about. And this topic today, I'm kind of hoping I get to stay on for the whole thing and hopefully can take me from being scattered and imbalanced, and as Leade has stated, back into a positive emotional leadership style. So I look forward to today. Enjoy your afternoon, folks.
Thank you so very much, actually. I really appreciate you being with us, and I do personally hope you can stay with us for the whole hour. And now it's my pleasure to introduce Leade Calvin. Leade is one of a few leadership development master practitioners with the expertise and certification to administer and facilitate both the Energy Leadership Index Assessment and the Emotional Intelligence Assessment, both recognized by Forbes in their top 3 as must-take assessments for professionals and leaders. With this unique and specialized combination, Leade works with individuals and teams to identify strengths, triggers, and development areas to deliver elevated results, fuel positivity, and foster engagement. Leade holds a master's degree in organizational leadership, a designation as a certified professional coach, a PCC professional designation by the International Coaching Federation, a certification as a mastermind facilitator, and most importantly, an immeasurable passion for personal, professional, and leadership development. Leade has led countless individuals to understand themselves deeper, build confidence and healthy assertiveness, as well as develop a framework for cultivating a positive mindset, manage stress and conflict, and practice emotional self-regulation in the fast lane of life and work. Leade, we are so thrilled to have you with us today. And on today's format, just a couple of housekeeping items. The live transcription has been enabled, so please refer to the bottom of your Zoom screen for that option. Leade is going to take over the screen with about a 30-minute presentation that hopefully will address many of the questions that you have brought forward. Some of them you have already shared with us. But following her presentation, we have a Q&A session. And at that time, you can either ask questions directly or utilize the chat function. And we try to get to all the questions, as well as the ones that you have already shared with us, either via email, social media, or any other way that you're connecting with us on a regular basis. And on that note, all over to you, Leade.
Oh, Thank you so much, Mishka, for that lovely intro. And Deanna, thank you to the Y for sponsoring this really great series. I know that I've enjoyed many of them. I'd like to thank the GNCC for inviting me to be a part of the Lunch and Learn series. As Mishka and Deanna mentioned, the pandemic has really pushed so many of us into, I mean, we were stressed before it started as a people. So the complexity of emotions that have been added to that through the pandemic have only layered into that. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And as Mishka said, I'll go through a slide deck presentation, touching on a number of the things that I think that, will frame in what we're all working with, as well as give some very concrete frameworks or action steps to help us all self-regulate. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen here. There we are. And if I just have a thumbs up out there that the screen has been successfully shared and everyone can see it. Anyone want to put a thumbs up there? Awesome, thank you. Okay, so I think you already saw in the chat and in the opening slide, there is a workbook. Some people like to take notes and jot things down through workshops and webinars. Please feel free to. If you're more of an auditory, you just want to listen to it, that's your call as well. So do what works for you. So who am I? Mishka gave me a wonderful introduction, so thank you for that. So I'm a former higher education administrator. So I've held leadership positions throughout my my career, both as a leader of people and of processes. I'm a certified emotional intelligence specialist, a coach, e-speaker, and I'm obsessed with supporting you to live and lead your life and work in the fast lane of life. And I'll get into what the fast lane is in a bit. But the most important thing is, like you, first and foremost, I'm human. And the reason that is so important to highlight is because that we all are underneath any roles we play, whether that's parent, partner, boss, peer, whatever we are, first and foremost, we hold the position of humanity. And with that comes emotion, right? We can try to deny that, and there are historically not. Luckily we're moving out of that in the world stadium now, but we can try to ignore that in the workplace. But I think we can all agree that doesn't actually happen. It just becomes the unsaid and undealt with. So I like to frame in that we are all human, because that's a very, whether you are the CEO, the chair of a board, or frontline. That is who we present as first. Okay, so over the course of this webinar, we're going to really dig into how emotions shape who we are, how our emotions trigger and impact how we react and relate to others. And we're going to really talk about the reaction as opposed to the response or the relation, and how to improve our mindfulness to foster positive and emotionally effective leadership mindset and practices in the fast lane of life and work. So leadership is a big word. Some people are very comfortable with the word leadership. Some people are very uncomfortable with the word leadership. So just to frame in how I approach leadership in terms of this webinar today, leadership happens at all levels, but primarily we are leaders first and foremost of ourselves. So the leadership of self. Then we are leaders from the middle. So through our peers and by example. This is arguably one of the most powerful forms of leadership, that influential form. And then finally, positional power leadership. So always think that whenever we have to play the positional power leadership card, we've probably lost our impact because we're playing that leadership card. So we really want to see through emotional intelligence and through emotionally effective leadership of self, from the middle and of others, how we can do that in an emotionally self-regulated way, right? Sounds easy, doesn't it? Maybe not so much, but we're definitely going to dig into some techniques. Okay, I'm going to start by asking a series of questions here. And so I'm going to show this slide at the end of the presentation as well, once we have a few more of the pieces of the puzzle of how we can best answer these questions, okay? So this is really starting to assess what is the energy of your life and leadership, okay? So how do people feel around you? What kind of culture do you create around you? What are you saying without saying a word? What is the energy of your thoughts, your actions, and of your behaviors? What energy do you attract? And then if that is perhaps not what you are wanting to attract, what energy do you want to attract? So we're going to be digging into a little bit around self-awareness. And obviously we only have a lunch and learn time. So we're going to do it, we're going to be fast acting at it. But studies have come back that about 85% of us feel we're self-aware. But the studies say that really only about 15% of us are actually self-aware. So when I ask these questions now, as we dig in through this lunch and learn, and I ask them at the end, you will in effect be increasing your own self-awareness because you're now asking these questions with some sort of metric or some sort of ability to reflect on it. Okay, so that's a nice takeaway from that we'll give you today. So quickly over the agenda that we're going to do today is I'm going to feature 3 of the 15 subcompetencies of the emotional intelligence EQI model. We're going to explore FASTLane implications on the energy of our life and work. And so FASTLane is an acronym. It's a proprietary program that I've developed that stands for frustrations, assumptions, stresses, and triggers. So those are kind of all those big power emotions that tend to move us into reactivity instead of response or effectiveness, right? And so really we want to figure out what is moving us into the fast lane so that through our self-awareness, we can begin addressing it, right? It's not to deny it, push it down, ignore it, pretend it's not there. Emotions need to be felt, right? But what we want to do is become aware of them, notice that we're going into the fast lane, become aware of them, start to understand them so that we can manage and neutralize them. So it is a process. It's not, okay, I'm acting this way, I need to let that go. There needs to be a little bit of work done along the way. But as soon as we start the process of understanding that we've moved into the fast lane, then we're one step ahead. Okay, so we'll talk a little bit about that. And then finally, we're going to do a quick overview, and there's lots of space in your workbook to start jotting this stuff down as well. For our, what are your strengths? Where are you a rock star, right? It's really important to be prideful so that you can do much more of it. Where are the gaps and potential growth opportunities? And what do you want to do about moving yourself forward? Okay, so that sets the stage for what, in a very lofty way, we're going to cover in the next over lunch. So what is emotional intelligence? So emotional intelligence is a knowledge body on awareness of self, how we manage ourselves, awareness of others, and how we help to, or how we relate and respond to others. So it in itself is a theory and a knowledge body. What we want to know is, what is emotional effectiveness? Well, that is putting that theory, that knowledge body, into action, right? And that is into action when we are emotionally reactive. Right, that's the key piece. You know, most of us, I mean, not fancy myself quite emotionally intelligent, especially when there's nothing rattling me, right? Me, even I live, eat, and breathe this stuff. But when I'm emotionally reactive, I have to be constantly using the frameworks that we're going to go through briefly today, and deeper ones, of course, to say, okay, am I able to be emotionally regulated and effective, even though I'm in the fast lane? Right. So that's the key piece, is understanding emotional intelligence is one thing. What is it like when you are in the fast lane? Okay. So you can see how that's the theory in action. Okay. So this is the BARON, the EQI 2.0 emotional intelligence framework that I'm going to be referring to. As you can see, there are 15 subcompetencies. In the spirit of today's lunch and learn, I've highlighted what I call a 3-hop. It's a great introduction to our being able to just start the process, right? I'm sure there's many on the call who have some experience in emotional intelligence, and I'd love it if this was in person and I could say, show me your hands. Who's out there who has a little bit, who has none, who has tons, right? And hopefully we are all together sometime soon to do something like this. But for now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go I'm going to take the premise that it's an introduction. And so I'm going to go into a little information on 3 of them. And like I said, it's the 3 hop that I think in terms of emotionally effective leadership, again, leadership of self, leading from the middle, and leadership of others. It's what's going to get us on the way. So the first one is our self-awareness. As I mentioned, there's a large cavern between those of us who think we're self-aware and those who actually are self-aware. And that's a continuum, right? I could be very self-aware in some areas and really, missing the plot in other areas, and vice versa with others. So it's, how are we noticing what's showing up? Are we listening to the signs? Are we being very mindful? You hear a lot about mindfulness is really, sort of simple terms coming down to, are you where your feet are, right? Is your mind in the moment with you? Are you distracted? Have you ever had those conversations where you're having it, but you're so distracted and the person walks away and you're like, what did we even just talk about, right? That is, in that moment, you were not mindful, you were not in the moment and not distracted. So one of the key things is really being aware, how am I feeling right now? How is it showing up in my body? Are my shoulders starting to go up around my ears? I can tell you, anytime your shoulders are chunked up around your ears here, that's not natural. Your body's sending you a message, right? So try to take a step and listen to what it's saying. If you get those tummy aches or headaches out of nowhere, anything where your body is trying to send you a message, it's trying to send you a message. So try to just pay attention to it. Our central nervous systems are not wired for the level of stimulus that comes at us in modern day. We're wired for like 50 to 100 years ago. And so sometimes we're not even listening to the messages that were being sent, right? In fact, to the point where I have cut my skin, like, so you get a bruise or a cut and you see later and you don't even know when you did it, right? That is how disconnected we are, because our systems are so overloaded at this point. So it's really important that we just try to slow our thoughts down and become aware of, okay, I have a bit of a nervous tummy. I know for me, sometimes I have a bit of a nervous tummy. Why? Take pause, take 3 deep breaths and take pause. What is bothering me, right? That helps build your self-awareness. Harvard University did a study a number of years ago and found that 47%, on average, 47% of our time is lost to unconscious thought. 47%. To me, that is a horrifying statistic, right? Because that means almost half of every day, half of every week, half of our lives is lost to being preoccupied or unaware of what we're thinking, right? In that time, we know that almost 50%, so 47% of our time, we are not self-aware. So it's really important to increase our willingness to slow down and listen and understand where we're being poked and triggered, because that will help us identify the sources and then, like I was talking about before, understand, acknowledge, manage and neutralize those emotions. Okay, so that's the first one. So as a leader, we want to be aware. We want to have the complexities of being a leader, especially if you have positional power in the workplace, but even a leader from the middle or a leader in your own life, because we're not only impacting ourselves. If we're unaware of how we're acting or what we're thinking or what we're saying without saying a word, we are now spreading that out to the people that we who are on our teams, in our organizations, without having the awareness then of how it's impacting them, right? And so that becomes a multiplier effect of how things pass forward, okay? So the second competency that I'm going to highlight is empathy. So empathy as a leader, empathy in general, obviously, as a society, we really need to embrace this as a founding principle. But empathy as a leader is the ability to take the time and emotion to see things from another perspective, to really try to understand what somebody else is going through, and yourself, right? So it goes through you and out to others. I can tell you that dollars to donuts, when we are emotionally reactive, empathy is one of the first emotional intelligence competencies that flies out the window, right? And that's human nature, right? Because we go into, when we're stressed, we go into the fight or flight and we turn inwards, right? Where it's all about us, and it's very hard. And I'll go into something a little bit further in the slide deck to talk about that. But so it's really important that as a leader that we really just bring it to the forefront. Where is my empathy in this? Where is my empathy in this? Even if sometimes that's such a challenge, right? Because it could be that, you know, somebody's asked you a question for the 10th time that you didn't think needed to ask the first time, but they're still asking. And so now you're frustrated and your empathy, I can imagine, whoosh, is gone. And you're probably out there, if we were in the room together, that there'd probably be a few giggles now, because I'm sure we've all done this. I certainly know that I have, but it's okay. So how am I looking at it from their perspective? What holes am I not filling in the communication or in the understanding that is answering that question? And that's just an example, but and so how is empathy at play in your leadership, on the leadership all levels? And then the final one in this in the 3-hop is optimism. So optimism is not rainbows and unicorns. I think we can all agree that none of us wished for this pandemic to come, but optimism is giving the gift to yourself and others that given the scenario, given the circumstances and situation, we can do the best we can with what we have, right? And so being able to model that as a leader is incredibly important, right? So sometimes even if you put these 3 together, just on a very quick level, from an emotionally effective leadership perspective, we can put together sentences like, listen, I know that this is very stressful for you or for everyone, right? So that empathy. It's stressful for me too. I know I'm getting neck pain from feeling so stressed, but I know as a team, as a unit, you know, whatever it happens to be, we are going to be able to make the best of the situation as it is, right? So it's one simple sentence that really, it creates that interpersonal, it creates vulnerability, it creates connectivity, and that's really effective, especially that it acknowledges that we are all human and we all are having it. And as one of the key tenets of emotionally effective leadership is also showing a sliver of that emotional vulnerability yourself. Okay, so as a little recap here, self-awareness is the inner work that drives outer success, right? That is the platform from which all else exists. And I think in the very beginning of the slide that was up before we started, leadership starts with the self-awareness to positively lead ourselves. If you take nothing from this other than to dig in, peek behind your own curtain, if you will, look in the mirror, figure out what do I need to know about me. Empathy is a renewable resource. The more you give, the more you receive. Yes, there's going to be folks who don't give it back. That's okay. There's lots that will give it back, right? So really focus on that piece. And then optimism, it's a mindset and it's a gift that you give to yourself and you share with others. So I'm going to pull up a quick poll here. The polls are anonymous, so feel free to, I'm going to allow panelists to vote. Oh, that's a neat little thing on this one. So it's all anonymous. And what I'd like you to do is just do a quick little self-assessment, right? In the interest of time, there's the 3 here. So where do you self-assess your self-awareness to be when you're in the fast lane? So remember, emotional intelligence, emotional effectiveness is when we are emotional. Okay, so where do you self-assess your self-awareness to be when you're in the fast lane? Where do you assess your empathy to be when you're in the fast lane? And where do you self-assess your optimism to be when you're in the fast lane? I'm gonna, oh, they're coming in fast. Oh, what a great group. Look at you. This is great. All right, we're almost at 50% voting already. Keep them coming. So I'll keep the voting open for maybe 5 more seconds. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.5. I'm just watching the last ones come in here. 1.5. Remember this when we were kids? 1 3/4. Okay, and off. Okay, so I'm going to close it now. So I'm going to share the results here. So as you can see, let me just have a little look-see here. Okay, so the majority, almost 50%, consider themselves to be at a medium, which I think is very realistic. I love the honesty of the folks who scored lower, or the not sure, it depends, because that in itself is self-aware, right? That is like, I'm not sure, right? And so that is a fabulous starting point. And it could be that this is one of the first sort of forays into really doing that self-exploration. So that's amazing. But it looks like there's like a good amount of sort of that medium on its way to high. So we're obviously in good standing here. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing that. That's obviously just like a sort of a quick assessment on what it is, but it really starts you thinking, right? It all fits into that self-awareness piece. Okay. So for the full assessment, this is how a report comes up. And so what I want you to do, I mentioned in the front, we were going to talk about, where your strengths are. So as you went through that, if you were thinking, yeah, this is an area that like, I really am optimistic, or I really am empathetic in stressful times. Note that, right? Give yourself in the workbook, or just post it on your desk, give yourself a big star and be like, this is something that I'm excellent at. And then give the world more of that. That is one of your gifts, and lean into it, right? That's where you're an emotional intelligence rock star. And then it's also important to be like, I actually think that under pressure, I could probably be more empathetic, or maybe I'm not as optimistic as I could be when things are tough. So where are your gap areas, right? So and this is just an example report that I pulled up just for illustrative purposes. You can see that the person's empathy on this one is one of their lower ones. It's certainly not low, but it's one of their lower ones. So it's something just to be really mindful of. Say, okay, when I'm having a conversation with someone who's on my team, or one of my peers, or whoever, am I remembering now that I know it? Am I remembering? That's that self-awareness piece to do it. Okay, so what? So what does any of this mean, right? So Daniel Goleman, who folks out there may or may not have heard of, I became very familiar with over the course of my career with Daniel Goleman. Majority of my master's work was on emotional intelligence. And so he brought emotional intelligence, the theory and knowledge body of emotional intelligence, to what they call edutainment, and brought it to the forefront. So one of his tenets is, if your emotional abilities aren't in hand, if you don't have self-awareness, if you're not able to manage your emotions, have empathy and effective relationships, then no matter how smart you are, you're likely not going to get very far, right? So it's really important to have the two together, the smarts for whatever that is for you in your industry and your sector, important. And if we were doing the emotionally effective leadership workshop, there's a framework, the leadership framework, that talks about how these work together. But really this quote does sum it up for our purposes today. That is, we need the both. We need the smarts, right? For, again, whatever that is for your sector, your business, your industry, but then that emotional self-regulation. And that again starts with that 3-hop. Okay, so now we're going to move into understanding, assessing, and measuring your emotional currency. Yes, there is a currency to it. So the most important thing, and I think that we're probably seeing that arc already in this Lunch and Learn today, is the most important thing we manage is our own energy. But that is much easier said than done. Wouldn't you agree? I bet you're all, yep, Leslie, you're right. But it is hard, and I get it. I'm an emotional being, right? So it's not something that I'm just here talking about. I live this, and it's something that I also work to manage on a daily basis. So the most important thing we manage is our own energy. And so you're out there, what? How, Leslie? Exactly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start going through the Energy Leadership Index, and I'm going to explain 4 or 7 levels of emotional and behavioral reactivity and responsiveness. Okay. So again, with the emotional intelligence, as well as with the Energy Leadership Index, on that same page on my website with the downloads that you got your workbook from, there's sort of overviews with a bit more information if you're interested in them. So I'm just trying to fill it in. So with the index, human energy is categorized by two different names of energy. So one is catabolic energy, and that is level 1, level 2, and that's sort of like the feeling of powerlessness, or feeling you're at the victimization of something happening at you, or anger, resistance, control, right? And those are very human emotions that we can't deny. And then there's anabolic energy, and this is a higher level. This is where we're more positive and productive and proactive. So when we are in catabolic energy, things happen just us. We are focused on just how is this happening to me. When we move into level 3 and up, that's that anabolic energy. This is when we're starting to see that maybe there's more out there. So level 3, rationalizing, is starting to think, maybe there's another side to this. Maybe it's not just happening to me, or maybe it's not all about me, right? When we are emotionally charged, that is a very powerful thing to remind ourselves, because when, again, fight or flight or freeze, right? It's human nature to go right into, how does this impact me? So at that point, it's a great question to say, what would be a level 3 thought on this, right? What's another way to look at it? What's another perspective? So, and the reason within this, this framework, they use catabolic energy and anabolic energy instead of positive energy and negative energy. And that's very intentional, because they don't want to assign judgment, right? Because sometimes we need that catabolic energy, right? To create a little bit of get up and go and oomph in ourselves. And sometimes anabolic energy, high anabolic energy, is just not, it's just not reasonable or appropriate at the time, right? We've been hearing more and more about this toxic positivity, right? So if somebody is feeling very down or sad or low, and you meet them with that high level positive, high level anabolic energy, it's a disconnect, right? It's not going to be appropriate at that moment. Whereas it going down, maybe giving them a compassionate or some rationalizing energy would be much more appropriate for the moment. So this is just a way to say, okay, so if in that moment where empathy is gone, what am I feeling? I'm feeling very angry, or I'm feeling very frustrated, right? So once we are in catabolic energy, that's where our hot buttons hit. I think there's a pop-up on my website. I'm not sure, I think it's still there, but if it's not, I have a free hot buttons webinar. It's great. That's a great way to start figuring out where, from that self-awareness piece, what's pressing your buttons, what's putting you into the fast lane and that catabolic energy. So feel free to, I'll make sure once we're done here that the pop-up's still there so you can find it easy. Okay, so now what? Now you have lots of information, and that's a good thing I talk fast, right? Because there's a lot of information in here, but now what are we going to do with it? So I'm going to give you a framework, a model, this fast lane model, so that you can start putting all these components together, okay? So that when you're going through it and you say, okay, what was the first step? Okay, the stimulus hits, right? So whatever that thing is that's making you emotionally reactive, and then noting, okay, I've gone into the fast lane. Where, right? The frustrations, the assumptions, stresses, triggers. Where am I in that? Is it an assumption? Am I telling myself a story? Is it a frustration? We all have those. Okay, so how can I just neutralize that? Is it something deeper? Is it something that's really causing me stress, right? And why? Again, finding out the why. And then is it bigger and deeper? Is it a trigger, right? And so from a coach speak perspective, that's when we start getting into a gremlin message or our inner critic, right? So where are you being pressed, right? And if you do that, the hot buttons, that'll help you figure out where you're being pressed. Then you get to decide, okay, now that I know, right? Because we're putting in that self-awareness where we know we're in the fast lane. Now we're going to think about it. My energy is now my choice, right? So now what do I want to do with it? Do I want to react, right? Am I going to skip over everything Leslie just said? And believe me, I have done this. So don't think there's no judgment in that. We've all done it. Am I going to continue to have that catabolic reactivity, right? Am I going to react, or am I going to pause, breathe, always 3 breaths? If you can take 3 deep breaths, it helps to slow down your physiology, the biology of your body and brain start to slow down. Breath is so powerful. Say it's free and it's private. No one needs to know you're doing it. So take those breaths, take that moment, ask for, if you're in a safe environment where you can say, you know what, I just need a moment to process this, then do that and take the, like, give me 5 minutes. If you're not in an environment that you feel that you can have that conversation, you can buy yourself time in a million other ways. You can say, you know what, I just need, text came in, I need to answer. I'm just going to run to the washroom and then we can finish this conversation, whatever it is. And then take those breaths, right? So you can say, why is this triggering me into the fast lane? What is the source? Again, that self-awareness is piece. What is another perspective? That's you're invoking your empathy by tapping into that level 3, seeing the other side, right? And thinking, okay, what's the best case scenario that can come from this? So that having that healthy, emotionally healthy response and leadership. So, okay, so self-awareness. What I want you to do as we move to the end of this is reflect on your emotional intelligence strength. I've mentioned it a few times through, where are you a rock star? There is an area in the workbook. I want you to fill it out, and I want you to be super, super prideful about this because that is what makes you, you, okay? It makes you awesome. Take some time to reflect. You've invested this time in the lunch and learn. Go whole hog and dedicate some time over a tea or a coffee or water, vino, whatever it is, and think, okay, what makes me reactive and pushes me into the fast lane, right? Feel free to invest and do that, the Hot Buttons webinar as well. And then think, what are my growth opportunities, right? And how can I use that to understand, manage, and ultimately regulate my emotions, creating that regulation. Okay. So again, you'll have a spot in the workbook to do this. So you want to set an initial goal. I'm a big fan of less goals to start, right? So don't look to set like 3 to 5 goals, set 1 or 2. Some people like 3 I'm okay with, but really focus on the 1 or 2. So as an example, you know, these are just examples. You pick whatever works for you, but want to increase your self-awareness through mindfulness. So allocate a week to noticing what's bugging you, right? Just start mapping it, right? Write it down on a piece of paper, on a notes file, wherever. So you want to increase your optimism. Start noting and recording assumptions that may cultivate or deflate your ability to be optimistic, right? What's happening? In what areas is it fostering your ability to be optimistic, and where is it being taken down? You want to decrease your reactivity. Start noting circumstances, people, anything that is dropping you into that level 2 reactivity, right? And start noting trends, right? And all of these put together start leading you on a very intentional life. Okay, so now I'm going to take an opportunity as we're finishing up here to re-ask those questions. And you're welcome at the end of this to take a picture of this screen because these are questions that you can continue to ask yourself, right? And they're great for self-awareness. So how do people feel around you, right? Do you fancy yourself a level 5 leader? So your opportunities, you're high anabolic, but sometimes you're level 2 when you're stressed out. What happens if you're stressed out more than you realize, right? You're in that 47% of unconscious time from the Harvard thing. So people actually think you're a level 2 leader with a smattering of level 5, right? It's important that we take the time to understand that about ourselves so that we can address it and do something with it. What kind of culture do you create around you? You know, again, using those index levels, what are you being drawn into, and how do people feel around you? What are you saying without saying a word, right? Especially in leadership positions, the power of our body language, our facial expressions, how we stand communicates so strongly to the people around us that it's really important that we understand that. What is the energy of your thoughts, actions, and behaviors? Maybe through this you thought, oh, you know what, I'm a higher level, but I'm actually have a bit of this and I want to work on that. What energy do you attract, right? Do you find people bringing gossip or small things or complaints to you? And are you hopping in with them, right? And having that conversation with them? Well, then they're going to continue to bring that to you, right? If people are bringing that to you and you sort of are polite, but not engaging, they're going to grow tired of bringing that to you and find someone else to. And then you can find people that you want to talk to things about. So like energy attracts like energy. It happens in science, in matter, in anything that you imagine. It's the same with human energy, right? Human energy attracts like energy. So what do you want to attract? So if you're not attracting what you want, what energy do you want to attract? Okay. Oh, you know what? I'm going to go back. I told you I'd give you a chance to to take a picture. So if anybody wants to take a picture, these are questions that it's really important that we have honest, reflective conversations with ourselves. Okay, so hopefully everyone got that picture, and I'm going to give you 2, 1, and I'm going to move to the next one. Okay, so some go forward steps here. Set your development goals. Like I said, you've invested this time in the workshop, so go lean fully into it and create the action steps and indicators so that you know you're meeting those goals. Follow me on Instagram, LinkedIn. I have a private Facebook message or a Facebook group. I share a lot of information on all this stuff all the time, and I love to chit chat and all this stuff back and forth out in social media world. So please feel free to connect. If you're interested in taking the emotional intelligence or the energy leadership index, there's a link to that on my website, or just send me a message. They're both really powerful assessments that I have benefited from. You'll see in the workbook, the last page is a contest. So I will be giving out an emotional intelligence assessment and coaching debrief. There's a number of ways to enter that, so you'll see that information in there. And please feel free to message me if you are interested in finding out options about any of this stuff, any of the life mindset work. I launched a course this year, an online course that you can do if you're interested in, I'm so, like I said in the first slide, I'm obsessed with all of this stuff. So if you are interested in as well, there's that option. Please feel free to message me about any team leadership or organizational coaching training or speaking. You can book in if you just want to chat and find out, more about what I do. And please ultimately remember that our energy is our choice. So whatever we're not changing, we're choosing. And while the circumstances of our life may not be our choice, the energy of our thoughts, emotions, and life is our choice. So what are you going to choose? Thank you so much. I think I now pass it back on over to the group. So I will stop sharing my screen.
Leslie, thank you so very much for this informative session. There's so much to take in, and it's nice to see because it's also reflective in a number of the questions that have come forward too. So we want to take the next 15 to 18 minutes to hopefully get through all the questions that have come forward, and also ones that are part of the chat here right now. And so Leslie, if you're okay, I'll just jump right into it.
Please do. I just need to take a drink of water there because I was yapping so much. So yes, absolutely, go for it.
Very good, very good. We judge our emotions. There's a study out that says that 1/3 of us are deeply critical of our own emotions, and we do the same of other people's emotion. We might inadvertently shame them out of emotions seen as negative, jump to conclusions versus seeing those emotions as valuable. And then I'm looking at that part of it, and I likely think that it's probably more than 1/3 of us judging emotions, our emotions or that of others. It might even be higher. And then I'm going back to a statistic that you mentioned where you said that we actually spend about 47% of our time in unconscious thoughts. And so here I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, we're spending time judging, we're spending probably significant amount of time, we're spending time of unconscious thought that is there. If we change over time, will we get rid of all those negative emotions that we might experience in time when we become more conscious, more just conscious and aware of what we do? Can we then look at it and saying in 3 months, 6 months from now, I might not experience those emotions anymore?
Oh, that's a great question. I love how you phrase that. So there's a number of levels to that. So I'll address them as you ask them. So in terms of, actually, I'm gonna address the last part first in terms of will we get rid of negative emotions? Our end goal is to not be emotional, right? Again, as humans, we are our energy is emotions are energy in motion, and we are emotional beings, right? So we should not look to deny or look to not have emotions. But what we want to do is we want to understand that our emotions are only as powerful as the stories we give them, right? So that's why I'm saying when we can start noticing how things show up, then we can start assigning like, okay, is this So in the FAST acronym, is this an assumption, right? Am I assuming this is how it's going to go, or am I asking the questions? Another one of the subcompetencies with the emotional intelligence framework that I didn't talk about today is called reality testing. And that is, am I asking the questions that clarify if this assumption is actually real, right? So sometimes we can get, I know myself, again, I'm guilty of all of this, right, over time. So am I creating a story or an assumption in my head that's winding me up, or conversely flattening me, right, and making me feel guilty or shamed or down? But is it actually happening? So from an emotionally effective perspective, am I asking those questions? Am I testing that reality? So we don't necessarily want to look to deny emotions or get rid of them, but we want to understand them so that we can neutralize them. It's really important that we don't judge emotions of ourselves and others. And that is one of the key reasons that in the Energy Leadership Index framework and model, it's referred to as anabolic and catabolic energy. And it's very intentionally not positive and negative, because if someone, myself, you, others are angry about something, or feeling level 1, feeling down or shamed or guilty about something, and someone is at like level 5 or level 6, which is, oh, there's great opportunities in this. It's like, I might not be ready to see the opportunity in it yet. I just need to be in this. So we need to understand that higher on the index is not always better. It could be that we need to be like, okay, so I need to meet this person at a level 3 to say, okay, tell me about it from your side. This is what I see. Just tell me. Or that compassion of level 4 to say, I'm here and I'm here to just listen. Right. Yeah. So it's not, we don't want to push ourselves or others. The flip side to that is when we're in that lower level, that level 1 or level 2, we also don't want to unpack and stay there. Right. So that's why once we can understand why we're there, then we can, either lick our wounds or diffuse our own fires or whatever it happens to be, and then start moving ourselves out. But it's never about not feeling it. Does that make sense, Mishka?
I think it makes sense. And I think it makes sense to our participants here too. And that the harm we do by judging that aspect of it. And we mainly are probably judging ourselves harsher than we would ever judge anyone else in this part of it too. But you brought up another really good point, Leslie, and that spoke to actually the empathy that is involved actually in recognizing where we are at, or a colleague of ours, or a family member, a loved one of ours is at. And it's really like, it's the active attempt to experience someone else's like feelings and thoughts and understanding that. But I think words probably play a critical part at that time. How can we best articulate it when we speak to someone else? That we have empathy for where they're at, that we somehow, how do we best express it? How do we show it?
Oh, you know what? Probably is in active listening, right? And so what we tend to do is, probably because of either empathy or solutions, or especially because things work so fast, is we want to move them to fixed, right? We want to move to solution. And so it's very powerful is tell me more, right? How are you feeling, right? It could be, I haven't lived through that, but I can feel what you're going, I can feel through you how hard this is on you. What can I do? Or would you like me to just be with you? Right. Yeah. So it's really having that, not jumping in to layer onto their story or push them to a solution, but to really start listening. When we're starting to really judge ourselves for our emotions, that's when we're starting to get to the T in FAST. And so again, from a coach perspective, that's when our inner critic is at work. And so it's fundamentally important that we understand our gremlin message or our inner critic message, because that's what's diffusing us or making us defensive, right? That's that inner piece, that inner work drives our outer success. When we're judging others, there's something that's called the fundamental attribution error. And so that's a term, a leadership term, or a business organizational term that's is we judge ourselves based on circumstances and others based on character. So it could be and I'm just going to use you, Mishka, because we're chatting. So Mishka's late because she's unreliable. I was late because it was traffic, right? So we tend to assign, the fundamental attribution error is that we tend to assign heavy judgment on others based on character. And so it's something just to keep in mind, to be, you know, if I was in the same situation and I was late, why would I be late, right? So not only are we we're checking ourselves with the fundamental attribution error, but we're also intentionally using that level 3 energy, where we're starting to see that there's another perspective, to help us increase our empathy, to say, I wonder why. Yes, maybe Mishka is always late, but is that why she's late today? Yeah. Right. And then that goes to that assumption piece and the reality testing. So you can see, like, it's very complex and they all layer together, but they layer together beautifully.
Yeah, no, that makes actually sense. And I think it comes down to the fundamental knowledge to never make an assumption, or always actually, before we actually ever think about it, and say, like, here's the assumption that I'm making, and the assumption about this person, this individuals. And that is a real sense of becoming self-aware.
Absolutely.
Here's a question from Amanda, who has been able to join us today. Do you have any advice on how to be passionate and care about things without being perceived as being too emotional? And this is really interesting, because the term too emotional is often being used. And again, by that term too emotional, there is such heavy judgment attached to it as well. So let's see, what are some of your thoughts on this one? I want to show that this topic matters to me. I'm passionate about it.
Yes.
I'm fighting for your cause, their cause, and others. How do I find the balance that is needed?
Oh, I love this. Okay, so when I mentioned the emotionally effective leader workshop, and there's a framework for emotionally effective leadership, and so I'm going to try to, I'm not sure if you can see this or even read my handwriting, it's terrible. So what this framework is in the middle, we have emotional intelligence. Now we need to have the tech, right? We need to have the skills, the smarts that I talked about to be effective in the jobs. And we need to have that passion, right? That's that part of that, the actualization piece, the manifestation, right? You're leading things through your passion. But in order for it to have impact, we need to have the ability to filter it through an emotional intelligence, right? So we never need to get rid of our passion. That's critical, right? I am a fully passionate being. But how are we doing it effectively? By not being reactive, right? So if people aren't buying what you're selling, so to speak, or aren't on side, how are we not ending up in level 2 of that reactive energy? How are we not feeling deflated in that level 1? But we're at that level 3 or level 5 with opportunities. How are we then looking at what we can do to move it forward, right? So it's a great question, because we want a world filled with passion. We want workplaces filled with passion, but we need to be able to to layer that in not being emotionally reactive.
Yeah, no, that makes makes full sense actually when we're looking at that. Here's a question by Shannon, and it relates to the feeling negative. Mm-hmm. Maybe we're feeling some negativity about our own failures, about our own weaknesses. And the question is, how much time should we spend with some of those emotions? So I'm looking at it and thinking, oh, I'm feeling, I failed here. Am I supposed to move on within 2 minutes, within an hour? Is there a time frame that actually is healthy to spend with our emotions, and where we really have to recognize I'm spending too much time on it, I'm not shifting it? And I think that's a very important question in almost catching ourselves to saying, how do we shift from one stage, as you identified, to the next one? So what's a good time frame?
Yeah, and I think the key is what you're saying. The key word there is shift. So if you're spending the time with your emotions and you're wallowing or festering, so you're just reliving and it's ruminating, right? Then you kind of want to make sure that you're doing some inner work to shift it right? Spending time with our emotions is great. Thinking about how we're feeling, thinking about how it's showing up. This is all great if we're moving ourselves in positive forward motion. That doesn't have to be fast, but if you are just wallowing in the experience and being so self-critical, then you're really moving into that stress and trigger, that gremlin inner critic. And so that's when you start to ask, why? What's the core of this? Why am I so emotionally triggered? Anytime the size of ours or others' emotional reaction is disproportionate to what happened, then we really need to look behind our own curtains and find out, okay, so where is this coming from? Why am I feeling like this? A lot of times I know with me, when I'm very emotionally reactive, it is directly tied to a values conflict. I'm a very values driven individual. So down here on this framework, here, passion, values, it's all, and beliefs are all in this bottom piece here. And I know that I will cease to be impactful when my values are in conflict. If someone or something has had a values conflict with me, this is like, I might as well just erase it, because I'm like, so I have to actually sit with myself to be like, okay. And I know I've been doing this work for so long now that I know exactly, okay, so this was the value that was in conflict. This is why I'm in level 1 or 2, whichever one I'm in. And then I'll try to peek up into level 3 to say, okay, so what is it from their perspective? What's another way to look at it? And then I'll drop back down into level 2 and I'll know, right? Like maybe at this point, I'm not going to be my best self. So I need to say, okay, can we have this conversation tomorrow? Is it timely right now? If it's imperative that we have it right now, I'm going to need a few minutes because I need to process myself. So you're getting the best version of me, right? Because right now you're not. So there's a lot of honesty and vulnerability in that. If it's a situation you feel safe and comfortable to have that. Sometimes there's situations you're not. If not, like I said, that you can always say, oh, there's a phone call I have to get. I need to go to the loo, whatever it is. I'm going to go outside and I'm going to grab a coffee. Let's have this. Whatever it needs to be for you to start thinking, okay, so why is this triggering me so much? If it's at that depth, probably a little bit of inner work needs done to uproot it.
I actually, in listening to this, I think that a lot of, we can draw in other people to support us too, people that we trusted, individuals that we value, and we can have this honest conversation about. But I'm also looking at our attendees. A lot of them are leading teams.
Yes. And
we might notice or recognize things in colleagues or staff that we have, in people that we report to. How can we support them without crossing a line that maybe is not ours to cross?
Absolutely. That's great. To recognizing that it's not ours to cross is important. Leading by example is so powerful, right? So when I said before about, what energy are you attracting? If somebody is coming to you with a lot of like lower level catabolic energy or complaints, and you are staying, above the fray and you're not engaging, you're sending the message that that leadership by example is much more powerful than we give it credit for, because they'll say, oh, you know what? Mishka never goes down that rabbit hole with me. They may not consciously say it, but then they're like, I want to be like that. Right. So really, unless you're invited into their journey, I would be very careful about crossing that line to start now at that point, giving people guidance on what they should or shouldn't do if they haven't asked. Right. Because it's all of our own journeys, and we can be really powerful just by leading by example.
Yeah, actually, I think that's exactly right. I think we do need to know when we're invited in to have these dialogues, or when we just need to live it. And I think that in itself is, I think, probably our greatest strength. Yeah. I'm conscious of the time because we said we would keep everyone here for an hour, and that's all I want to do. But Leslie, I can say that we can have a longer conversation for another hour or two on exactly this one. So thank you very much for being with us. We will share today's webinar has been recorded, and we'll share it with everyone who has attended, and it will be available on our website as well. But I want to bring to your attention that we've we've actually been joined today by the new CEO of the YMCA, Stephen Chang as well. So I want to shout out to Stephen for being with us today. It's wonderful, and welcome to Niagara. We're looking forward to working with you directly as well. And may I make you aware that on June the 3rd, we have a young professional conference called Engage, which was created actually by our Next Niagara Council, one of our advisory groups that brings together young professionals from all industries and sectors to learn, connect, and grow with like-minded individuals across Niagara and beyond. Naturally, we can't meet in person, but we have and will provide engaging sessions and conversations about personal, professional, and community growth. We need your input, so love to have you there. And on that note, I think I'm going to call it a wrap. Check out our website. Check out Leslie's website for more details and on this very important topic. And Leslie, I have to say, I think we do need you back at one point because I think we're all on a long journey when it comes to that, and we do need to support each other. So thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. And I'm so honored that I was invited. So thank you to the GNCC for including me in this wonderful Lunch and Learn series. And again, thank you to Deanna and the YMCA for sponsorship. And thanks to all of you for taking time to join in. I know life is so busy and work is so busy and people are like, oh, another Zoom. So I'm very honored you took the time to join in.
Yeah, it was a great hour and a great lunchtime. So thank you for that. And wishing everyone a wonderful rest of the week. Thanks.